Chapter 10. A smear of pale gray pre-dawn light swept into the car, waking Frances. She tucked Lizzie crosswise into the seat to finish her slumbers. Then she slipped into the small necessity at the end of the car to wash her face and brush her hair. As soon as it was coiled and anchored with combs on top of her head, Frances prepared to care for the children, some of whom were beginning to waken. Seth stepped to her side and smiled at her. "What can I do to help you?" he asked. Pleased with his offer, Frances smiled in return. "According to the schedule I was given, we'll have a depot stop soon," she said. "There'll be a great deal to accomplish in a short time." He glanced at the hairbrush in her hand. His mouth stretched into a grin. "Don't ask me to help with hair bows and such. I'd be lost." Frances laughed. "And we'll find you another job." He raised a finger to tuck a stray wisp of her hair into place, but Frances stepped away, her face growing warm. "You surprise me, Reverend Diller," she said. "You're being much too familiar with me." "I apologize," Miss Kelly answered. "I didn't mean any harm." Aggie, her hair a tousled mop, sleepily staggered up the aisle, coming to a stop in front of Frances. She stared at Seth suspiciously. "I'm ready to help," Aggie said. "You've been given the day off," Seth told her. "I'll help Miss Kelly with the boys." Aggie's chin stubbornly jutted out, and she stood as tall as she could. "The boys mind what I tell 'em," she said. "You're not one of us. They won't listen to you." Seth stood his ground. "I offered my help. Miss Kelly accepted," he told Aggie. Quickly, Frances stepped forward and began to brush Aggie's hair gently. "Goodness knows there's a great deal to do, and I'm glad to get as much help as I can. I'd like Aggie to continue with her job of waking the boys and taking them to the privy when the train stops. She handles the younger children well. Reverend Diller, I'd appreciate it if you helped me carry fresh milk from the depot to the train." Tossing a smug look back at Seth, Aggie began to wake the boys. Frances quietly told Seth, "Being my assistant means a great deal to Aggie." "I didn't think she'd care so much. She's a young girl. She's living an unhappy childhood in an orphan asylum and is traveling into a future that frightens her. She knows she may find someone to love her or she may not. Anything that helps Aggie feel a little bit special is important to her and to me." "Sorry," Seth said. "I only wanted to help you. I didn't think these things mattered to a child." "You were once a child, Seth," Frances said as she started up the aisle. "Think of your own childhood, how you felt when this was how you felt about what was happening to you. Try to remember." The stop for wood and bar was a short one. Frances, thankful that Seth had taken care of buying fresh milk, helped the last child aboard just as the engineer pulled 2 long blasts on the whistle. All the children were wide awake now and hungry, so Frances lost no time in dividing milk and thick slices of bread among them. As soon as their stomachs were full, the car became a noisier, livelier place. Some of the children tried to lean from the windows for a better look at the countryside. Questions flew from the air, along with the small flecks of soot that dotted clothes and faces. "Look at that white house with the 2 chimneys. It's so big. How many families do you think live in that house?" Lucy Griggs asked. David Howard leaned forward and squinted. "Will we live in houses like that?" "Nah, they're for swells," Eddie said, "but I don't see any tenements. Where are the tenements?" "Look," Jack Greer shouted. "There's cows. Where do cows sleep at night? Do they have a house?" "Horses have names," Emily Averill said. "Do chickens have names?" "When are we going to meet the people who will choose us? How long will this take?" Aggie asked. "We'll arrive at the first stop in eastern Missouri tomorrow. It's a town called Harwood," Frances said. Suddenly it seemed the children remembered why they were on the train, and the car fell quiet as everyone became absorbed in his or her own thoughts. Lucy reached into the aisle and tugged at Frances's skirt. "Will you help me find a family?" she asked. "Of course," Frances said. She slid into the seat beside Lucy and held her hand. "I want a special family," Lucy said, "with a mother and a father and a little sister for me to love. I've always wanted to have a little sister." "Lucy, dear," Frances began hesitantly, "if people already have a child, they may not come to find another one." Lucy's eyes shone. "Oh, yes, they will. You see, their little girl will want a big sister. She'll be looking for me." She held out Baby and said, "I'm going to share my doll with my little sister." Frances hugged Lucy to her, unable to answer. 10-year-old Harry Stowe suddenly popped into the aisle next to her. Throwing quick glances back where he'd been sitting with his brother, he lowered his voice and said, "Can I talk to you?" "Of course," Frances said. "I'm listening." Adam hangs on to me all the time. He's been doing that ever since Mama and Papa died." Frances nodded as Harry went on. "If somebody takes Adam and somebody else takes me, I don't know what will happen to him." Tears flooded Harry's eyes and he said, "I don't know what will happen to me." Frances put a hand on Harry's shoulder. "Harry, I'll do my best to keep the 2 of you together, but I can't make any promises." Harry's shoulders sagged. "I'm scared, Miss Kelly. You don't know how scared." "Yes, I do," Frances said. "I was scared too when I thought my brothers and sisters and I would be separated." "I can't let anything bad happen to Adam," Harry insisted. "We won't let anything bad happen to him," Frances said. "A few months after being placed out, Andrew McNair comes to each home to make sure the children and the adults are happy." Harry wiped a hand across his eyes. "But how can Adam be happy without me?" he asked. Adam suddenly shouted, "Harry, where are you?" "Right here," Harry called. "Please, Miss Kelly, please try to keep us together." "I'll try," Frances promised, and fought to hold back her own tears. She rose to continue down the aisle with a sob stopping her. She looked at David Howard, who was rubbing his eyes with his fists. "Want to talk to me about it, David?" Frances asked as she knelt down next to his seat. "I miss my chum Mickey," David answered. Frances patted David's shoulder. "Tell me about Mickey," she said. David gave a long sniffle, squinted at Francis, and said, Mickey's the best chum anybody could ever have. He's older than me, so he looked out for me. He's a street Arab, and smart as... Francis interrupted. What'd you call him? David looked surprised. A street Arab, he said. Mikey sold newspapers, shine shoes. He took care of me. He said I'd never be anything more than a gutter snipe, and not a very good gutter snipe at that. Oh, David, I'm sure that Mickey didn't mean it, Francis told him. David looked back at Francis with big eyes. Yes, miss, he meant it, David said. Gutter snipes aren't smart enough to be street Arabs. I tried, but I couldn't take care of myself. So Mikey decided I should go west on an orphan train and find a family to take care of me. I'm sure Mickey was right, Francis said. Mickey's always right, David said matter-of-factly. He said the family would give me love and food and a good bed to sleep in. Even send me to school. That's true, Francis said. I'm not sure about the school, though. I read some because Mickey taught me, and it's hard, David said. Francis hugged David. Mickey is a very special friend, she said. David nodded as he whispered, that's why I miss him so much. Francis continued to up the aisle to her seat. To her surprise, Seth was waiting for her. Hello, Mother, Kelly teased. Have you patted enough little heads and wiped away enough little tears? Francis sighed as she sat down beside me. You haven't done what I asked you to do. Seth was startled. What'd you ask me to do? Remember your own childhood, she said. No one can truly understand children unless he's been able to remember how he himself felt as a child. Who's the preacher, you or me? He asked with a smile. You also told me to forget the past and look to the future. I told you to forget the unhappiness of the past, not the happy parts, Francis said. Seth shook his head. I can't, not yet, he said. It's the fire that keeps me going. He paused for a moment, pulled out a battered silver watch, and checked the time. Francis noted the initials SRC engraved on the front cover. How odd, she thought. S could stand for Seth, but that's his second name, and why would the R and C stand for? Maybe it hadn't always been Seth's watch. Maybe it once belonged to someone else, like an uncle or grandfather, a relative whose last name wasn't Diller. Suddenly Seth asked, Are your parents still living, Francis Mary? My mother is, she said, but my father died when I was a child. Lost both my parents in the war, Seth said. He leaned forward, balancing his forearms on his thighs, clasping his hands together as tightly as on his knuckles. So tightly his knuckles looked like white knobs. The Union butcher, General Lyons, swept his troops across their land, stealing their food and everything of value. The Federals burned their house and destroyed the crops. My parents tried to protest, but they were killed. Oh, Seth, I'm terribly sorry, Francis said. Sorry isn't enough, he grunted. Nothing can make up for what the Federals did. While she struggled to think of the right words to comfort him, Seth blurted out, Federals only think they won. Wait till they see what revenge can do. Francis gasped at the twisted bareness in his eyes. Revenge isn't the answer, Seth. It can't solve anything, she said. As a preacher, you must know the only answer is forgiveness. I'm just one of many, Seth said quietly. There's plenty of folks who are angered by injustice. Sometimes injustice demands revenge. Injustice is wrong, Francis said, but there's much better ways to right wrongs than getting revenge. Seth didn't answer. For a moment, Francis was frightened. She was sure he had a plan already in mind. What kind of revenge are you talking about? She asked. Seth didn't have a chance to answer. At that moment, shoving and yelling, Sam and Marcus tumbled into the aisle. Boys, stop fighting, Francis called, but they paid no attention. Seth had to separate them. Tell me what happened, Francis ordered, and they both began talking at once, and she couldn't understand them. It seemed to be forever before order was restored, and by the time Francis had heard their stories, which made little if any sense, the train was slowing down for a scheduled depot stop. Francis immediately began counting children. Finally, she spied Eddie, who was lingering in the back of the car with Seth, and called him to come forward and join the others. The train will make a stop shortly, Francis said. Remember to hurry. We hurry, Aggie muttered. And then we get back on the train and sit and wait. What if all the hurrying and waiting doesn't do any good? What if we get to Harwood and nobody's there to choose us? Aware of the shocked and frightened faces waiting for her answer, Francis said calmly, You'll find a lot of good people in Harwood. They're as eager to meet you as you are to meet them. She put an arm around Aggie. This time Aggie didn't stiffen. Don't always expect the worst, love. Think about the many good things the world has to offer. Aggie cocked her head as if thinking, I don't know if you're right about good things being out there, Miss Kelly. So far, I haven't seen any. By early afternoon, the children were tired. Some of them dozed and some slept soundly. Frances leaned back, her bones aching from the hard wind slats, and wearily closed her eyes. Psst, Miss Kelly, you asleep? Frances opened her eyes just as Eddie slipped into the empty seat next to hers. Need to talk to you, he murmured. What is it? Frances asked. Has to do with that preacher, Eddie said. That is, if he is a preacher. Startled, Frances whispered, Eddie, that what Reverend Diller does or says is his own business, not ours. Unless he's making it ours, Eddie answered. What do you mean by that? I mean, he spends a lot of time looking at you and thinking about you, and last night he went and cozied up to you after he thought we were all asleep. It's nothing like that, Frances insisted. He just wanted to talk, but she found herself blushing. What I'm getting at, Eddie says, that some of what he told you last night don't add up. I'm no slouch at ciphering, so Are you telling me that you listened to our conversation? Eddie raised wide, innocent eyes at hers. I was on the seat just behind yours. I wasn't listening on purpose. Before Frances could tell him that wasn't the seat he'd been assigned to, Eddie went on. I don't know how long a preacher's got to study to be a preacher, but I'm guessing it's years, isn't it? Yes, but he talked about being in the Army, Confederate. If he was in a Union prison and then in an Army hospital, that didn't happen all overnight. I know, Francis said, and I'm guessing again, I'm usually right, that he's not much more than 19 or 20. I agree, Francis said, but I don't know why he'd lie to us. Wait, he told you about being in prison. That sounds real, Eddie said. But he didn't talk about being a preacher. I wonder if he is or if he ever was. I think he's just pretending. Francis sighed. Eddie, we have no right to discuss Reverend Diller behind his back. I'm sure he has a good reason for whatever he says or does. After a pause, Eddie said, there's something else. At the last depot stop, Reverend Diller went to the office and sent a telegram. There's nothing wrong with sending a telegram. Francis said her mind was whirling. Her headache was worse. How she longed for a cup of peppermint tea. Should we find out what he's up to? Eddie asked. Francis spoke firmly. No, Eddie, we must not pry into Reverend Diller's life. Eddie looked at her sharply, and Francis realized that her words were sounding unconvincing, even to her. It was important to follow the advice she'd given Eddie. Stop and think before acting. This is no time to make decisions. She said, we're both tired. While we have a chance, let's get some sleep. Eddie nodded agreement, seemingly content that Francis was keeping an open mind. He left her side as silently as he had come. This is all nonsense, Francis told herself. Seth's actions are none of my business. She rubbed her temples with her fingertips, but try as she might, she couldn't relax. She was afraid that something was terribly wrong. She drifted into sleep. When she awoke, Seth was at her side, one elbow propped on the back of the seat so he could face her. You were staring at me, she accused. I felt it. He grinned. I admit it. You're mighty pretty to look at. As Francis self-consciously tried to tuck stray strands of hair back into place, Seth said, I wish we could have some quiet time together if all these children want your attention. Seth, Francis said, I was hired to care for these children. They have first claim on me. I'm glad no one else does, he said. Have a claim on you, I mean. Francis gulped. This conversation had gone far beyond playful teasing. Seth, be serious, she said. He smiled. I am serious. You're an interesting woman, Francis. You're sweet and kind, but I think you secretly love adventure and excitement. Really, Francis began, but Seth continued. I mean it. Cooking, washing, cleaning, not enough for you. Seth, Francis said firmly, let's talk about something else. I'd rather talk about you, he said, and about us getting to know each other better. After this trip is over, you're back in Kansas. One of the children let out a wail, and Francis jumped to her feet. See what I mean, Seth said? There's so much I want to tell you. There's so much to talk about. I'm willing to wait till the trip's over. But, Francis said. Seth interrupted. Don't worry about my finding you. That part will be easy. Wherever you go, Francis, I'll be able to find you.